Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of my Cedar Point Recreation Park. We are still cranking away some ride stations and infrastructure, and today we're going to be focusing on Top Thrill Dragster. Again, for no reason other than that's just what I was motivated to work on today. And this one really turned out to be way more of a challenge than I thought it was going to be. Had a lot of problems with this build. Many different issues that manifested themselves in all sorts of different ways. There were some good things with this build though. We used some single rail roller coaster to make some lovely looking custom supports behind the top hat, which turned out looking pretty nice. Not quite as good as the ones that I've seen that use custom scenery, but as I mentioned, we're only using non-custom scenery here. A little bit tedious to get all these diagonal pieces and cross beams and everything together, but I think the end product is pretty good. However, once I started putting together the station decorations and queue and everything, and while I was looking at some of the photos and Google Street View images, I noticed that my ride was way too high off the ground and things looked a little bit weird. Since you're supposed to be able to stand right next to the launch area and watch the trains take off, but if they're too high off the ground like mine are, it looks a little awkward. So I decided to lower the entire ride by about 2 units, and I thought that would be a very easy thing to do. Just rebuild the ride and delete the old one should be pretty easy. But I ran into all kinds of technical problems when I tried to do this. I was getting this weird issue where it would spawn all my trains on top of each other in the station and they wouldn't go anywhere, and it was very frustrating. So I spent way too long troubleshooting this, trying to figure out what was going on, before I realized that for some reason the trackatecture roof that I had built was causing some sort of weird conflict, and it confused the game. I'm not really sure why it happened, but once I deleted that roof, tediously rebuilt it afterwards, everything fixed itself and turned out okay. So this is a fantastic lesson for me. Always make sure that your ride build is 100% the way you want it before you start putting any scenery, especially trackatecture, around the ride, because if you need to move any of that stuff, it's gonna cause you a lot of headaches. So it was a little bit annoying to have to rebuild the roof twice, but that's just the way it goes sometimes, I suppose. There are a couple other fun little items over here in this area. As I mentioned earlier, the bleachers that also have some food service stuff underneath them. I put in some stairs using River Rapids inclines, which is pretty typical for parks that use a lot of trackatecture like this. And we can take some normal footpath, make it invisible, and put some benches on it to make it look like the peeps are sitting on the bleachers watching the trains go by. And it's very adorable. One of my favorite little set pieces so far. So in addition to the drama of having to destroy and rebuild the ride several times and figuring out those problems there, I also discovered that there was an entire building that I missed when I was plotting out our layout earlier. There is a gift shop right across from the Top Thrill Dragster station called Speed Zone, and for some reason I entirely neglected it when I was doing my layout. So I had to just figure out how to squeeze that in. Things are now a little bit tight on this midway. Fortunately, you can still see everything okay, and the peeps can navigate around alright, but it just looks a little bit crowded. I don't think it's going to be a huge issue going forward, but it's still unfortunate that that happened. I might have to spend a little bit of time here before we go much further, making sure there aren't any other buildings that I missed. Because if there are, and we're not going to be able to include any of them, that would be very tragic. I want to make sure I get every bit of building and scenery in here that I can. It's probably a little bit too late at this point to make any changes to the layout if we did miss anything. But if that did happen, the earlier we catch it, the easier it's going to be to fix. So yeah, surprisingly long build time for what I thought was going to be a relatively simple ride. For the problems we mentioned earlier, destroying and rebuilding everything a couple times, but also a bunch of little buildings over here that I neglected earlier on, such as the maintenance buildings and 2 gift shops, in addition to dealing with your normal stuff like foliage and transfer tracks, editing the queues, getting the exit path correct, everything like that. That being said though, pretty happy with the way things turned out. I feel like a lot of the scenery pieces over here, like the bleachers and the station roof, lent themselves pretty well to RCT recreations, so things are looking pretty good. I'm pretty happy with this area. Glad to have it over and done with though, so we never have to worry about Top Thrill Dragster again. If you don't count the fact that the front cars on each train aren't quite right. I'm going to ignore that for now though. I still haven't been able to come up with a decent solution to that problem. Not sure if I ever will, but I'm not going to worry about it too much. But anyway, that's going to do it for today. Hope you enjoyed this episode. As always, if you got any comments, questions, suggestions, let me know. Thanks for watching.